fantastic session, all-time lap record and looking comfortable inside the box. And after a very disappointing, as we said, Sunday afternoon outing at Misano, this was needed on a circuit where he's gone very well at in the past. Of course, pretty weird, has to be said. Sunday afternoon, and this time last year when the rain fell and then it stopped, and then different tyre choices were made. Dixon was on pole and went for the wet weather option tyres, and that wasn't the case for him to push for the victory, and a lot of others in that case as well. It was the dry, slick tyre selection for Manu Gonzalez and Ayagura and others that helped those guys to finish on the podium and get good results. Gonzalez, that was his debut victory here at the 2024 Japanese Grand Prix. But heading into this afternoon, it is Dixon they're all chasing alongside Tony Arbolino as we venture into the Italian side of the garage. A good session this morning, as Lewis pointed out, recently coming off the back of arm pump surgery. So I think any potential worries that the Italian and the team would have had coming into this weekend, of course, a heavy braking circuit, a lot of emphasis on that side of riding. Arbolino, I think those worries would have been brushed aside with a very solid session indeed this morning.
You know, he was quick, but he put in a good bulk of laps to 16 altogether, which outside the riders that fell in pre-practice one, he was around about par for the course. He also saw Alexis Scridge have some mechanical problems which limited him to 7 laps. Danny Holgado here on screen, well, he put in 12. The last of them saw him go down the road at turn 10. He now has a look at what I assume is a track map directly in front of him on the sheet of paper as he leans his head from side to side. Perhaps, I think, memorising, generally when we see him doing that, he's memorising what gear he's supposed to be in as he goes through the lap. And he knows what parts of the racetrack not to be in, as he demonstrated earlier on today. For a rider who hasn't had many low points in a rookie season, perhaps this morning a little reminder of Danny Holgado that Moto2 can still bite.
Absolutely, yeah. 3 podiums in his last 4 races. Of course, that fantastic, perfect Sunday and Saturday as well when he pinched pole position over at his home Grand Prix. Backed that up with another pole in Misano and finished 3rd. Fantastic job. 44 points clear of his teammate David Alonso in terms of the Rookie of the Year chase, and I don't think many people would have anticipated or expected that coming into this year. I think, well, obviously with how Moto3 unfolded and just how good David Alonso was in 2024, everyone expected Alonso to be well clear in terms of Rookie of the Year in Moto2. That's not quite how it's played out. Fair play to Danny Holgado. He's been a revelation, I think, especially in the sort of few races in Moto2, up inside that top 10, well inside that top 10 in the overall standings. But yeah, just a trickier morning here at Motegi. But as you rightly say, Lewis, that's understandable, and that's what sometimes can happen. You're not going to have it all your own way in motorcycle racing, especially when you are a rookie coming to a circuit for the first time. So I assume and will be expecting Holgado to be making his way up the timesheets this afternoon.
As myself and Neil Morrison were discussing in recent Grand Prix. Good morning to you, Neil, back in Barcelona. If you are watching over your cornflakes, he did point out that Holgado's upturn has really coincided with Alonso's victory back in Hungary, and that clearly lit a fire under Danny Holgado, seeing the thunder stolen by his fellow rookie teammate. Well, has he come out fighting and swinging since then, with 45 points from a possible 50 in the last couple of Grand Prix. Salvador Reynas, something to be pleased with life. Perhaps won't be so pleased when I remind him that he was 17th quickest earlier on today. Well, he was only a second off the pace, so 8 were the margins, and we're expecting that to be the case this afternoon too, over this 40-minute practice session. But the top 14, we remind you, advance through to qualifying 2. Well, that top 14 include this man, Barry Bautas, 4th in the World Championship, the fast finishing Belgian in the San Marino Grand Prix a couple of weeks ago. He's going to need a slightly smoother session than we saw from him this morning if he's to book his place in the battle for pole tomorrow.
Yeah, turn 1 and turn 10, Bautas went gravel tracking understandable. Two difficult corners to get right around this tricky to negotiate Motegi layout, and then had something hanging off the front end of his Calyx Triumph as well. But finished the session in decent shape, did Bautus, in terms of getting some more laps on the board anyway. But yeah, here's another rider who has been impressive in the last few rounds. Will be looking to climb up the leaderboard. Holgado 24th, Bautus 20th, Agius 21st. We've got Diogo Moreira in 15th as well. As things stand, of course, everyone doesn't mean anything in terms of times now, but if it was to finish similar like that this afternoon, they'd all be going through Q1. Now, of course, are expecting that to change somewhat in the next few moments. Next 40 minutes coming up in this session, but a few of the top riders from last time at Misano just struggling to get it going a little bit here in Japan.
A few surprise names got off to really bright starts earlier on today, which could potentially create an upset or two if they continue that form into this afternoon. We had Zondervan and Goldberg and Emu Sasaki for the RW Hydrofoclia team was 7th and 8th this morning. I guess by virtue of his results so far this season, you could perhaps count Arbolino as something of a surprise too, to be up in 2nd place, although we know what a class act he is in Moto2. Danny Munoz was up in 10th earlier on today as well. The likes of Kinet, Moreira and Baltas all outside the top 10. Here is Diogo Moreira, as you can see on screens, is now up into 2nd place in the Moto2 World Championship. His 4th place finish, and give it another lap and he might well have taken a podium in Misano last time out. He's moving up ahead of Aaron Kinet by virtue of more race victories. They're on 188 points apiece in this squabble for 2nd place, which each of them are hoping will ultimately become a battle with Manu Gonzalez for the World Championship in the rounds that remain. So what Diogo Moreira has over the other 3 riders that he's fighting for the World Championship with is that he certainly would appear to be going to MotoGP next season, even if we're still waiting for official confirmation. Gonzalez, Kinet and Baltas all staying put in Moto2 for another year.
Yeah, everyone in that top 4 has their futures confirmed, which is obviously good news for all of them. Better news, of course, for Moreira, who we are fully expecting to jump up to MotoGP next year, as Lewis rightly says, but full focus on Moto2 and trying to win this 2025 World Championship for all 4 of those riders. And you could maybe chuck Jake Dixon in there as well, but very, very faint hopes now for Dixon to have a realistic chance of clinching the title. There he is on the number 96. But for Moreira last time out, it was only 3 points, but those 3 points could become very, very crucial by the time we are seeing who is crowned world champion in Moto2. Important to move back up into 2nd, gain 3 points back on Gonzalez, get it back below 40 points, and then go again this weekend. It's just been the 2 no scores in Germany, and then of course the Czech Republic, and then that P14, a disappointing 14th place finish over in Barcelona in the last 6 rounds. Other than that, he's obviously won in Austria, 2nd in Hungary, and then a decent P4 last time out as well. I think just a bit of a roller coaster, some inconsistencies, whereas Gonzalez has pretty much been level playing inside that top 3, 4, 5, top 6, of course, last time out in Misano. That's where, at the minute, Gonzalez holds the cards and holds that 39-point advantage. So Moreira and Kinet and Baltas this weekend do need to take some more points off Gonzalez. That obviously goes without saying, but an important weekend coming up in the Moto2 title race, that's for sure.
As we have seen over the course of this 2025 season, going through qualifying 1 isn't necessarily the end of your weekend, so can't necessarily say that everything is going to be decided in this afternoon session, but it will give us a little bit of a window into what we can expect. Manu Gonzalez, we have seen him go through qualifying 1 on 1 previous occasion this season. That was back in Austin. He did go on to qualify on the front row of the grid. Barry Baltas, well, he's been in Q1 5 times already this season. Moreira, well, he's been in Q1 5 times. Aaron Kinet 3 times. So Moto2 utterly unforgiving. No matter who you are, no matter what your reputation and championship position, you get this Friday afternoon session wrong, and by wrong we mean 2 or 3 tenths away from what you're capable of, then the potential ramifications can be quite severe in a place in qualifying 1. Practice underway then, 40 minutes of practice coming up. And I'm sure you know the drill by now, but in case you don't, top 14 advance automatically through to qualifying 2. Everyone else will have to try their luck in the Q1 lottery tomorrow afternoon.
You mentioned the gaps there in terms of if you just 1 or 2 tenths off the pace, it can cost you dearly. Bautas was saying that at the end of the race over at Misano. He's been astounded by how fast the pace has been throughout this Moto2 season. Of course, we've seen that record's broken pretty much everywhere we've been to, and Bautas, of course, been a part of that, and he's had great pace throughout this season. He was saying at the end of the weekend over in Misano that it's just astonishing how quick everyone's going. He's setting some lap times and seeing himself down in P10, P12 or wherever. It's been pretty phenomenal, the pace that these riders has been setting so far in 2025. That's just the relentless nature of motorcycle racing, especially in a category as Moto2, where it's pretty much all level machinery, same as in Moto3 as well. If you're a couple of tenths off the pace, I know Joel Kelso was saying this when he had a little bit of difficulty in Moto3. Didn't feel like I was too far away, but just a couple of tenths on race pace and you just find yourself well out of that podium hunt, especially when you've got the likes of Rueda and Quiles, etc. in Moto3, and of course the likes of Gonzalez, Moreira. About 10 different winners so far in Moto2. That's the nature of the beast, just how competitive it has been. So yeah, the riders who are in that championship chase certainly need to be on their A game here in Japan and for this flyway stretch, because this is where the title can be won or lost.
Yumi Sasaki has just set a new all-time lap record immediately in this Moto2 session, just to underline your points and Barry Baltus's point of how fast Moto2 is this year. Of course, in part down to Pirelli's aggressive tyre strategy this year. We do have the super soft SCX with us once again this weekend, in addition to the SC0, which is essentially the harder of the 2 rear tyres here this weekend. Now 148.828 for Yumi Sasaki is a quarter of a second quicker than Dixon went this morning in free practice 1. Dixon did do another lap incidentally this morning, if you weren't with us. Essentially, if you were getting some shut-eye back in Europe, Dixon did a 48.9 but had it cancelled due to yellow flags due to the crash of Danny Holgado. Yumi Sasaki has beaten either of those laps from Dixon and is on course to go even quicker still. I think with every lap that goes by, Elliot, we're taking the Yumi Sasaki home challenge ever more seriously.
100%. We do say that if you're racing on home turf, the crowd could give you another couple of tenths maybe. Certainly the case for Ayumi Sasaki so far. His teammate just ahead of him, Zonta van den Gorberg, had a decent session, of course, earlier on. He finished just ahead of the Japanese rider in P7 and P8 respectively. Maybe Ayumi Sasaki had a little bit of help, but nevertheless a fantastic lap straight out of the gates for Sasaki as he negotiates turn 11 expertly down the hill. This is Manu Gonzalez, P10 at his moment in time, a tenth and a little bit more away. And Moreira as well on a good lap time. So straight away in this session, no hanging about for these riders. They want to get out there and set those banker lap times as early as possible in the chase for the top 14. Moreira shadowing Gonzalez. Interesting tactics at play there between the top 2 in the championship.
Still a long way to go in this session, but a 148.828 is a fast time, whatever way you cut it, in any condition, on any tyre, in any language. That is fast from Yumi Sasaki. He's currently a 10th clear of Tony Arbolino, who's backed up a 49.2 in free practice 1 this morning with a 48.9 himself. Van den Gorberg third, once again underlining that both of the RW riders going very well so far this weekend. Van den Gorberg front row qualifier here last season, which in the rather quirky Japanese Grand Prix that we had in 2024, he backed up with the best results of his Moto2 career, 5th at the checkered flag.
Holgado then, as we look at him, already a second faster than he went in FP1. There's another sign of just how fast these riders are going. Holgado completed 3 laps so far. 2 of them would have been flyers and up inside that top 14. So obviously found some margin, found some pace where he was missing earlier on the number 27. Just lost a whole chunk of time there in split 3, but as I say, we've still got over 30 minutes to go, so we won't get ahead of ourselves just yet. But Holgado already a second quicker. That bodes well, and he's on another personal best this time around as well. With Salap's going well down in P24. Jake Dixon in touch with the top time as the pace quickens in this section.
The pace already would lead us to believe that many are out there already on the super soft rear tyre here, which many are expecting to be the race option here this weekend. You can just see the Aspar bike, the sort of red flashes on the sidewall of the tyre indicate the SCX, the super soft. It's very difficult to spot, even in 4K high definition, but if you are able to spot that, you can see it there on Salach's rear tyre as well. That indicates that they are on the softest rear tyre available to them, which means that we'll see some fairly long runs at the start of this session. Obviously, some very fast lap times straight out of the box, but it'll be a case of who can manage these tyres, who can continue to get consistent pace out of them. We expect race pace much more in the sort of mid to high 49s and low 50s by the time they get to 19 laps of race distance on Sunday afternoon. Saki Arbolino, Van den Gorber, Gonzalez fourth from Dixon and Guevara. Here he is, 6th place on the 28. He was inside the top 6 this morning too. Ortola 7th for QJ Moto3 MSI. So Boscoscuro's 2nd, 5th, 6th and 7th. Moreira 8th for Calex ahead of Alonso, Baltas, Holgado, Salach, who went down the road this morning, Alvaro Arenas, and Aaron Canet in 14th place, who looked rather chuffed when we saw him in the box, but the lap times didn't necessarily back that up. Canet 11th place overall. Of course, looking to avoid consecutive trips through qualifying 1 here.
He had a trickier time of things in Misano, didn't he? Had a big crash over in Barcelona. And speaking of crashes, that is
like a Radray, isn't it, on the QJ Motor3 MSI bike. We were waiting for his bike through the cloud of dust. As L mentions, turn 9, which is a crucial corner, the V corner, which gives you get it right, which Radray didn't. The best possible run up towards the hairpin of 10. The second bike in your picture behind Arenas, and the front end going very, very early there for Radray. Wasn't even a quarter of the way through the corner before it went straight up and down. Radray currently our slowest rider in P28 and likely now to stay there.
Yeah, classic turn 9 crash. We saw Rossi Yamanaka and David Almanza both crashed there in Moto3 a little bit earlier on this afternoon as well. So a tricky point of this circuit so far on Friday afternoon is turn 9. It's one of the crashing hot spots, let's say, at this mobility resort. Motegi turn 10, you can say as well, 11, another one of those. So riders obviously pushing on a little bit more this afternoon, trying to figure out that rear tyre and of course pushing the front tyre as well, which will be crucial because heavy braking. The front tyre takes a rather large pounding around this Motegi circuit. Guevara though already pulling into pit lane. Has he learned what he needs to learn on that run? Time will tell, of course. Senna Aegis though on his way. He's on another personal best lap time. It's, as you can tell, just calmed down somewhat on the timesheets. Of course, many of the riders out there on that super soft Pirelli rear tyre and just settling into their race rhythms, working out this afternoon. A couple of hours after the race time will be on Sunday, but obviously one of the better times, the best time to try and figure out what that rear tyre will do over somewhat race distance. An important first half of this session to actually work towards Sunday. And then, of course, we'll see the timesheets light up a little bit more in the final 15 minutes or so.
Yeah, Pirelli are trying to give the riders the biggest scope possible of possible tyre strategies in the race. They, I think, would ideally want every rider to go the same route on tyres as they all did in Misano, but the super soft tyres working so well in was around a circuit such as Misano a fortnight ago, which gave such good grip. There wasn't really the kind of drop-off which convinced so many of the riders to push as hard as they dared from the very start, and actually ended up pushing too hard in the Grand Prix, as we saw for the likes of Danny Holgado, who very nearly reversed back towards Diogo Moreira in the last stages of the race. So confident he was that the tyres would make the distance that he very nearly proved himself wrong. As we ride on board now with Barry Baltas. Pirelli said that last year when we came here, it was the first Pirelli Japanese Grand Prix in Moto2, that so much of the running in dry conditions was done on the softest available rear tyre, that they had already acknowledged that they needed to go a step softer this year. They have now done that with the SCX. Generally, when we've seen that X tyre, they've ran it in the race itself, and riders going out there for a run on it this afternoon would indicate that they believe the same. And the more laps they could put in this XCX tyre will give them an idea to understand the drop-off, when that drop is going to come, if it is indeed going to come. This will be a case of seeing what kind of lap times you can hold on to. We'll see what kind of lap times they do set as this session unfolds. We do still have a group of riders still lapping in the 49s out there on track. Jake Dixon, Manny Gonzalez, they both put in 1:49.7s on their last lap around. Senaragius, who we were briefly keeping an eye on a moment ago, he's just done his personal best of a 1:49.8 6 laps in. So already they're going the thick end of half second to a second slower than they were earlier in the session.
Altus just getting it a little bit wrong again down at turn 1. I think he just about managed to avoid
Story of his day,
a trip into the gravel for what would be the second time at turn 1 today, third time overall. Alonso Lopez remains in P20. It's going to be interesting to see the analysis timesheets at the end of play to see just who was able to lap quickest further on into the run on that super soft rear tyre. It's going to give a great indication as to what the playing field looks like early, of course, into the weekend, but it's going to give a great indication as to who has figured it out earliest this weekend towards Sunday. Salach up inside that top 12, just debriefing with the team. Let's try and listen.
Typically, as soon as we did go quiet, so did Philip, who just doesn't use 100 words when 10 will do. This is the kind of circuit that I think many suspected would suit Salach. He does generally go very well on stop-and-go circuits. The podium finish he took here last year wasn't all down to the layout. Of course, there was some weather that factored in, although I remember last year Salach had some early mechanical problems at the start of Q2 when the track was dry, and then had to go out to try and put a qualifying time in when it was wet, and up to that point his weekend was lost. The conditions and the way it characterised the Grand Prix with the rain just before the race was due to get underway. In fact, the rain came partway through the first lap and brought the red flag out, didn't it, during the Grand Prix last year, and suddenly transformed Salach's fortunes. He's a rider who he does need a big result here this weekend. He tries to secure a place on the Moto2 grid for 2026. He's one of a few high-profile riders in this field. Alberto Arenas is another one who's, of course, up in 9th place in the World Championship, that, as it stands, haven't found a place on this grid for next year.
Absolutely, yeah. Two leading contenders at various points at this stage in Moto2, searching for a ride. So unfortunately for those two, of course, remains to be seen where they do end up. Only a couple of seats left on the table as well, and we're going to probably see some names miss out on a seat and be forced to look for new opportunities elsewhere. Canet then over the line, just ahead of his session leader Sasaki. Canet 1.5 seconds off, Gonzalez 7/10 off the top time. So that indicates, as things stand, if they are on the same compound of tyres, that Gonzalez has this figured out a little bit more than Canet's at this stage of the weekend. Long way to go, of course, but Gonzalez looking pretty strong there in P4, just shadowing Jake Dixon in P5 as well. So at the moment looks like Canet has a little bit of work to do. Of course, level on points with Barrera.
Two together, riding on board with one of them, Manny Gonzalez. 49.8 on his last lap. In fact, his last two laps have been 49.8. Gonzalez's last two laps have been 49.5s. As far as I can see at the moment, they're the only two riders on the racetrack that are lapping in the 149s. Everyone else is in the 50s, all slower. Holgado is just at a 50.0. Canet at 50.3, as mentioned. Sasaki's now back in the mid-150s himself, as in Baltus. So Manny Gonzalez, who might sit fourth for the minute, and Dixon fifth, but both of those at the moment making a real impression in this afternoon session as we follow a couple of improvers as it stands. Vietti ought to improve, given he's down in P23. Only 5 riders behind him at the moment in the order. This is, I guess, in some respects, more like the Friday afternoon Chelsea Vietti that we're used to after what was a super strong weekend in Misano from the word go. Vietti is often a little hot and cold on a Friday before lifting himself up the order when it really matters, and Vietti climbs 10 places with that lap. He's now into the 149s and P13.
Better lap time then from Vietti into the 149s. Gonzalez again setting a 149.8, same pretty much lap time as Dixon. Dixon slightly quicker on that lap time. Vietti did say that in Barcelona, they found a couple of things to make him feel a little bit more comfortable and riding more naturally on that Boscoscuro machine, more confident, and he carried that over, of course, into Misano and just reconfirmed basically that they now have a base setting where Vietti is feeling comfortable, can pretty much do what he likes on that Boscoscuro machine, which is great for obviously the end of the season. Of course, he stays in the same team on the same chassis in 2026 as well. Just said when they got back to Europe after promising Thailand as well, but once they got back to Europe, just found that rear grip was a bit of an issue as someone has gone down in Sector 3 in our ears.
And does that mean what? In the back of the picture, and Aaron Canet is currently in 17th place, so if he can't get that bike back up and running and fixed, Canet's heading for Q1 here.
Yeah, hopefully get a replay of that. He's all up and okay, which is good news, but it looked like he was signalling for the bike to be taken to the side pretty immediately. So another turn 9 crash then. That's 2 in this session for Moto2, coupled with a couple in Moto3 as well. Obviously the rider's just pushing on that left-hand side of that front tyre, and it's just saying no more to some of these riders. This is the gaggle of riders that were behind Canet. These lap times should stand. They were pretty close behind Canet, so the yellow flags might not have been out at the time of the lap times coming in, but it's not going to matter too much anyway. Vietti not moving into that top 14, and it is a pretty damaged and second-hand-ish looking Triumph Calyx. Looks like the left-hand side of that bike. Can't quite see it from this angle, but Canet not looking too happy with what he sees.
Yeah, we're going to see him in the back of the picture. He crashed here in Moto3 a few years ago, I recall, when he lost the World Championship to Lorenzo Della Porta. Didn't see too many pieces falling off it. Let's ride from on board. Second gear to down to around about 70 kilometers an hour for turn 9, and ultimately to a complete stop from Aaron Canet's point of view. He picks the bike up, but immediately calls for some assistance. Well, he's going to need the assistance of his mechanics now if he's going to have any hope of moving through to qualifying 2. Canet now back in 19th place.
Yeah, 20 minutes to go then. They've got a little bit of time to get that bike back and get whatever needs to be fixed ahead of the final 10 minutes or so. But yeah, pressure on then for Canet and the Fantic Racing team. He was in Q1 last time out at Misano, potentially heading for Q1 again. Some big hitters currently outside that top 14. Vietti, last race winner in P16. Salas, of course, who we're used to seeing in that top 14. Aegis, who rediscovered his mojo back at Misano. He's P18, and Canet in P19 at this moment in time as well. So a few riders then with a little bit of work to do heading into the final 20 minutes.
A really scrappy day overall, hasn't it, for Fantic so far, with Canet's crash, and Baltus has been on all parts of the racetrack except the racing line, when we've generally seen him so far today, although he has now got himself up into 11th place on a 1:49.3. So looking at the lap times at the moment, you're going to want to be at the very least low 49s, if not 48s, to be anything like comfortable of a place in qualifying 2. There's more tyres will be thrown at this yet in the time that remains. Here comes Ramirez, who certainly needs an improvement because he can only go one way really from there, 26th up to 21st. But a circuit that Ramirez hasn't had a top 6 yet, although the layout would indicate that he should go a little better around here. Another rider who generally goes well on stop and go layouts, but at the moment 21 and a second and a quarter off the pace would see him alongside the fairly illustrious company of Vietti, of Canet, of Arenas, all at the moment heading for qualifying 1.
Roberts then in P12. His last lap time was 1:49.9. Not sure if that was, well, definitely wasn't an outlap. Not sure if Roberts has pitted or if he's potentially on fresh rubber, but he was looking to improve in the first sector. The time's just gone away slightly in the next 2 sectors. Ramirez incidentally has set a personal best in sector 1. A better session this morning for Roberts, up inside that top 5, hopefully for the team and his sake and American fans' sake as well. That was a nice confidence booster after a real poor run of results, has to be said quite frankly, for Roberts after his brilliant Renault victory. 1:49.544 on lap 10 of this session for Joe Roberts. So we're going to see, I think, a lot of the riders come into the pits fairly shortly to put in some fresh rubber ahead of the time attacks kicking off. And as I mentioned, a few riders do need to find some time. You can see Arenas and Aegis now pulling into the pits. Their potential work for Sunday and the rest of the weekend is done. Now it's maybe full focus on time attack mode being engaged.
A bit of a mini pre-qualifying session about to head your way. We already know from Aaron Connect's point of view, he's likely to take no part in it. For that crash at turn 9, as we now take a look at Daniel Holgado, who's having a certainly more problematic Friday than we've had from him in quite some time, probably since the summer break, in truth, for Holgado, as Mires completes another lap and doesn't appear too pleased with how it panned out, even if it was his fastest of the day so far, 150.002. Holgado has been a Q2 customer this season. Only once this season has Holgado not made it through to qualifying 2 at any stage, and that was Le Mans when he qualified down in 21st place. At the moment he sits in 14th spot, and for the first time really since David Alonso in Hungary, we can certainly say at this stage that the Moto3 world champion, here he is on picture, appears to have the edge over his fellow rookie teammate.
Certainly does, as things stand. Alonso had a good session this morning in P4, 4 tenths away from top spot, and he's having another decent session as well this afternoon in P9. We know that Alonso's Achilles heel this year has been that time attack, that soft tyre. When you've got plenty of grip in that rear end, you need to push as hard as possible to try and get a good lap time in, both on a Friday afternoon and of course in qualifying on Saturday afternoon. That's where he struggled. No real issues in terms of race pace, as we saw over in Hungary, as we've seen a few times this year. Even in Misano, qualified 11th, finished in 8th, qualified 25th over at the Catalan Grand Prix and made his way back up into P8, but just has to figure out qualifying, which on the other side of the box is what Holgado has managed to do. Only once in the last God knows how many races since Silverstone that he's qualified off the front 3 rows, Holgado, and that was in Germany when he qualified in 15th place. So Holgado has now figured out Sunday as well as Saturday. Alonso just needs to figure out Saturday, and that's a very lonely and
he's not in a rush to get back to the box and resume his session, is he?
Yeah, exactly that. So 15 minutes left. Slammed his
across with some Japanese marshals now. Helmet thrown to the floor. He's saying, just leave it to me, I'll get the bike back myself, says Aaron, who's letting his temper boil over a little bit here in what are pretty sweltering conditions here in this beautiful September afternoon at Motegi, where they're all currently playing catch up to this young man, Ayumu Sasaki, who, I say young man, he's approaching 25 years of age now, perhaps turns 25 next weekend in Mandalika. And here's Aaron Canet. You might want to take your crash helmet with you, Aaron, who's trying to... Come on, go get my crash helmet, please, he's saying. I want to get this bike back out on track, and in fact, he's accepting that his fate is sealed. Top of the cheeks, he unzips the leathers. And Aaron Canet, qualifying 1 is in your future tomorrow.
Not a sight we usually see, to be honest, is it? A rider stuck on the service roads, unable to get his bike going, not having a scooter to get back to the paddock. And of course, only the one bike rule in Moto3 and in Moto2, unlike in MotoGP. And unfortunately, it looks like he can't get the bike going. He's not getting picked up for anyone as well. So that is potentially session over for Canet. I will happily avoid Canet for the next couple of hours. Don't fancy getting in his way anytime soon, but that is crucial in terms of the championship. If it does stay like that, he can't get the bike back. Of course, it needs to be repaired as well, and the clock is ticking. So that is potentially session over for Canet, and a relative disaster, really. At the moment, he's P20. He's not being promoted into that top 14 in the next 5 to 10 minutes at least, and there's only 13 minutes left on the clock. So disastrous as things stand Friday afternoon for the rider third in the overall standings.
And it's a double whammy as well for Canet. He's also missing out on that crucial homework of understanding the longevity of the tyres for the Grand Prix on Sunday. Canet has only put in 9 laps in this session, which in fairness isn't too many less than the riders who've been busiest in this session. Well, a whole group of riders who've done 11 laps in this session, but of course there are still 12 minutes to go for more times to be put in. Certainly know at this stage Canet's only going one way in this session, and that's further down the order. 149, 855, P20, Aaron Canet. He is a rather forlorn and frustrated spectator. Where we saw Canet go down earlier on, and as we saw this morning, it's looking pretty rosy in the garden for Guevara here this afternoon. 6th place for him. One of 3 Bosca scorers up inside that top 6. He did tell us pre-weekend, this is a track that I like from the past, won here in Moto3, suits my style. At the moment, he's walking the walk as well as talking the talk.
Yeah, back-to-back top 10s as well over in Barcelona. A very solid P5 from 14th on the grids, and then a P10 from 13th on the grids over at Lozano last weekend. So Guevara is finding some form in Moto2, which is good to see. And as you mentioned, a track that he enjoys here at Motegi, P6 and a P2 for Arbolino signals good news for the Blue Crew Pramac Yamaha Moto2 box, as we are about to get this session going in terms of time attacks. Gonzalez waiting patiently to head out of pit lane. I can pretty much guarantee you that some riders will be fancying a little bit of a tow from the World Championship leader, and understandably so as well. But it's looking pretty good so far this weekend for Gonzalez. No issues as of yet, and he of course has seen one of his chief title rivals, Aaron Canet, suffer a crash and then unable to get back to the box. So it'll be full focus on himself, of course, but it'll be relative good news for Gonzalez that Canet is pretty much guaranteed to be heading to Q1 as the riders slowly come out of pit lane. How many changes are we going to see in that top 14? Vietti isn't safe, Bautis isn't safe either. Holgado has been pushed out as well after Lopez improved a little bit earlier on. Vietti P17, sorry, I got it confused. Colin Vire is up inside that top 10. There we go. That's the first time.
For everybody to commentate.
That's the first time I've done it live on air. Done it plenty of times off there, but the first time I do it on air. So yes, I feel well ingrained now in Moto2 commentary. Keeping your seat warm, Neil.
It doesn't help that they're in the same colour schemes on the tiny tower as well, both in orange. CVEI P10, CVIE 17. Vietti, you expect to move up from there. 10 minutes remaining in this Moto2 practice session, and it's Albert Arenas who I saw adopting the Elliott York practice strategy of following Manu Gonzalez. He went out with him out of the pit lane and was looking over to his left saying, go on, after you Manu, I'll just drop into your rear tyre and you can show me the fastest way around the Ability Resort Motegi. At the moment, the fastest rider around this circuit, fastest rider ever in Moto2 around this circuit is a Japanese rider, Ayumu Sasaki, who certainly has his fans here at this circuit with the 71s and the slogan that he carries, the nickname, the Crazy Boy. His fans will be going crazy if he can stay where he is in 9 minutes' time.
Holgado then, he's going to be one of the first riders to set a real time attack lap time. Will of course follow the number 27, and he needs a time as well, sitting outside that top 14 as things stand. Bautis heading out with Philip Salach in tow as well. So the final 9 minutes underway here, and Holgado is well in touch. It's not a personal best sector, but he's under half a second, half a tenth, sorry, I should say, away from Ayumu Sasaki's time. So it's good news so far for Holgado, but of course he's got the rest of the lap to negotiate, and that lap time has gone away exceeding track limits. I believe that would have been on the exit of turn 5, potentially in that second split, before you get to the fast right-hander of turn 6. As you get to the other side of the tunnel.
There's a few places where track limits plays a key role here, out of turn 3 and 4 as well. Famously cost Marc Marquez a pole position here the last season when he clipped the green coming out of turn 4. Out of picture, Jake Dixon and Celestino Vietti, a couple of Bosca-Scoros on the move. They've both set fastest first sectors. Dixon a tenth and a half up as we follow him through the front of the picture, just leading Zonta van den Gorburg. Here is Vietti, who's also up a quarter of the way around. Vietti looking to lift himself up from 17th place.
Bit of chatter on the front end there going through turn 7, but we've seen that plenty of times already this weekend. Loses a little bit of time in that second split, but still this is going to this is a great lap time coming in from the number 90. Just ahead of him as well. What lap time is Agius on. He's 1.8 seconds off, so not going to improve Agius, but a decent reference and a bit of slipstream potentially aiding Dixon, although this traffic potentially won't be down into turn 11.
And Albert Arenas has got the hairpin on the 90-degree corner to give its official title all wrong into turn 11. Dixon somehow trying to pick his way through the mayhem of the final sector. It looked like he just about did it. Lost a lot of his advantage through sector 3, which clearly Yumi Sasaki has got figured out. What about sector 4? We saw Dixon super strong there this morning. Has it happened again? The answer is yes. Dixon on a 48.741 goes ahead of his very good friend Yumi Sasaki. It's Dixon, as he was this morning, back on top.
Vietti also climbs into that top 14, then just ahead of Colin Vio. Is pushed down into P11, and that means Vietti's teammate Lopez is back outside of that top 14, and he is still in pit lane, Lopez, so he needs to get out there pretty sharpish and get a lap time on the board. Is that a crash, I hear, in our headsets?
That was awfully suspicious. Yeah. It has. The yellow flags have now come out in sector 1. Who's in the first sector? There's a big group that have got into turn 3. Is that Dixon that has stopped on the timing screen? It's difficult to tell. In fact, it's Baltus, so the day gets even worse from a Fantic point of view. Cadet in the gravel trap and staying there at turn 9. And Barry Baltus, who's rather precariously sitting 12th, he's in the gravel trap, not for the first time today, although this time he won't be walking out of it.
We'll have a double Fantic Racing Q1 pairing then later on Saturday afternoon, and Holgado could be helping Baltus outside of the top 14 if he continues this to the line. Out of victory corner for Danny Holgado on that Calix Triumph, fires it to the line, get a good run out of that final corner, and he does go to P4, found time in that final split as well, so that does push Baltus now into P13. Worrying times in the Fantic box.
Yeah, looking at some of the riders that are behind Baltus as well, you'd expect to improve. Agius 19th, Arenas, if he can get a 90-degree corner right, should move himself up from 18th. Salach 17th, then we have Lopez, Munoz, Roberts up to Baltus in 13th, and here is Joe Roberts. This could move him into the top 3 with this. Byron Canet already knows his fate. He might have some company down at Fantic in qualifying 1 shortly, as Roberts now exits the victory corner. 16, looking to move himself up from P14, and he climbs 10 places up into 4th.
And Baltus then is now outside of that top 15, so session potentially open for Baltus, and it's Q1 beckoning as well. Canet incidentally pushed down to P21 as she improves. Agius across the line, Salach with work to do as well, and Alonso now is in P13. Moreira in 12th with Arenas jumping up to P11. Here he is on your screens on the number 75. So plenty going on and plenty left on the table as well in this final 5 minutes. A few orange/yellow crash helmets popping up on our timing screens. There is Baltus. That is session done for the Belgian.
Yeah, let's have a look at all the mayhem at the top of the picture as riders try to stay out of the way. Of course, we saw an awful lot of warnings and penalties in Barcelona for slow sectors. The rear stepped out and it never really settled back down, did it, for Barry Baltus, and a rather sad sight from a fancy point of view as the Calix cartwheels through the gravel chat. A pair of crashes and a pair of Q1 fate sealed for the Fantic team. Connect currently then down in 21st. Baltus now back down to 15th place. They are not in a position to do anything about it. So we now turn our attentions really from a championship point of view to Moreira. So the riders 4th in the World Championship and 3rd in the World Championship are going through qualifying 1. It is far from certain with Diogo Moreira in 12th that the rider 2nd in the points isn't going to go the same way.
Yeah, he's on a good lap time though, Moreira. He's found time in the 3rd split as well. He's under 2 tenths away. Try and get that on the bottom of your timing screens. We'll keep an eye on the number 10. There he is on his screens, just ahead of Philip Salach, whose teammate Jake Dixon is going even quicker through the 3rd split. Salach needs this lap time. He'll get another 1, maybe 2 goes at it. Got a bit of traffic ahead of him as well, but Salach on the 12 needs this, and if he can get a little bit of slipstream behind, I think that's Adrian Huertas or Diogo Moreira just ahead of him as well. It is the 2 Italtrans riders just ahead of the 12. Salach, is this going to promote him into the top 14? It does, but just P13 as Dixon improves his time and extends his advantage at the top over Yumi.
And Moreira up into 5th on a 1:49.0. So Moreira into relative safety now. Munoz goes 10, so Alonso's now been bumped out. He's down to 15th place, make that 16th as Colin Via now moves up. Guevara also into the 48s. He goes 3rd. Dixon, Sasaki, Guevara, Arbolino now your top 4 as Via, moments after going into the top 10, has gone down the road. That looks like a crash through turns 1 and 2.
Certainly does, and that is session over for Vi, but in P10 he could well be safe and sound. Gonna obviously find out in due course. It is going to be down at turn 1. It looks like he went pretty late as well. There he is flicking it into turn 1. Rear end steps out. That just makes him lose the front end. And then the rear end steps back out on Colin Vi. Great to see the Dutchman is back straight up on his feet, but front end went, rear end went, and the rear end went then again and chucked him over the top. Good to see that Vi is all okay after that one.
Extraordinary landing, but he's got that 10th place lap time in the nick of time. Here comes Lopez looking to get himself into the top 14. He's unsuccessful. 16th for him, and now sees some yellow flags in his face, so knows that this lap won't count for too much. He'll get one more at it if he keeps pushing and gets to the checkered flag in time. There's Barrera getting well out of the way. Safe enough, you'd say, on a 49.0. In terms of position, he's looking good in 7th place, but a 49.2 from Salic in 15th isn't good enough. So Barrera and Gonzalez, currently 7th and 9th. In terms of lap time, they've not got an awful lot to play with.
No, Alonso half a second off, just over, of course. He was 4/10 off in FP1 and was P4. He's half a second off in practice, and he's down in P17. We've mentioned a few times already how close it is in Moto2 this year, and we're seeing it right in front of our eyes. Aegis, nothing coming for the Australian, who found some pace. That is Vi's bike getting waved away and taken away from the gravel trap, so we don't need to see that one. But yeah, Aegis then a little bit of a surprise, because he did find that feeling he was searching for after a disappointing run of results over in Lozano, but not quite happening for the Australian at this moment in time. 1 lap to go. This is their final goes at it in practice.
Well, officially on our screens, the yellow flag indicator has gone, and David Alonso will be pleased to learn that as he now starts his flying lap. Can he rescue his day? Altola is in 13th place on a 49.1. Arenas and Salac on 49.2s, Lopez, Alonso and Baltus on 49.3s. It is so close. Here's Salac then up behind Senna Aegis. Aegis not improving, so he's on course as it stands to go through in qualifying 1 as well. So the rider 8th in the World Championship, also heading for Q1, joined by 2 of our top 4.
Yeah, this is going to be interesting then. Salac, if he holds this to line, will just about get inside that top 14, but he is getting held up by Aegis. What lap time is the number 84 on the age? 1.1 off through split 3 Aegis, so nothing happening on this lap, and Alonso has also lost time in that second split, so the Colombian looks like he might be heading through Q1, and it looks like Salac will be as well, because that is not how you negotiate turn 11, and I think he'll be rightly somewhat annoyed by how that last lap has unfolded.
Well, a bittersweet day then for Elfmar Vidiez, because Dixon could be about to extend his advantage over the rest as Guevara and Cooney go side by side up ahead of us. As we watch Marcos Ramirez, he's trying to rescue a place in the top 14. Unlikely though, given that half a second covers the top 14 as Dixon improves to a 1:48.679. He is now a 10th.5 clear of the field. Gonzalez with a late improvement to take 4th place ahead of Arbolino and Holgado. Ramirez with a shake of the head. He knows he's heading through for qualifying 1 as well. He's of course 11th in the World Championship, so a number of big hitters having miserable Fridays here in Japan, particularly if you're down at Fantic. David Alonso not too pleased either, neither is his team. Scouts claimed on this opening day, but it is a
session. He's politely, I must say, waved me was in less than 24 hours time, but a great day for Yuya Sasaki in second place, much to the delight of the home fans, of course, here in Japan.
It's no fluke either. He did that 1:48.8 on his first time lap of the afternoon. Didn't improve at the end of the session. Didn't have to. Second place for Sasaki, and 3rd for this man, Van Guevara, underlining that Boscostura are in business this weekend. Guevara 6th earlier on today, 3rd in the afternoon. The Pramac Yamaha Moto2 squad in their press release pre-weekend talked about Guevara looking to finally secure the podium, but he has knocked on the door a few times this season. Of course, was very close to the podium in Silverstone when he led the Grand Prix. He also finished 5th in Barcelona and in Austin. Certainly feels at this very early stage of proceedings as if it's the best opportunity yet for Ethan to potentially have a dart at the podium here this weekend. Diogo Moreira 8th. Once again, as we've said so many times in Moto2 since the summer break, the championship contenders taking something of a back seat.
Absolutely, yeah. Diogo Moreira, important, that top 14, it feels like, especially with Gonzalez looking relatively comfortable, as he always does on a Friday, the championship leader. But Moreira will take some confidence into Saturday, and if he can just squeeze himself onto that top 2 rows and be in and around where Gonzalez might qualify, then that will do for the Brazilian, as we eagerly await to see what Fantic Racing can do with Canet and Bautas in Q1, and they'll be joined by David Alonso again, just not quite able to get that time attack nailed as he would have liked. I mean, it's pretty brutal out there, isn't it? Where was Alonso? 6/10 off top spot, and he's down in P70.
Usually, as we said so often, didn't make the big step at the end on new tyres. His best lap came on his second time lap of the afternoon. It is Jake Dixon, though, who tops both Friday sessions here in Japan, and Yumi Saki stunning second for RW. Ivan Guevara up in third for the Blue Crew Pramac squad. Gonzalez fourth from Arbolino. Holgado, who turned around his day after a practice wanting to take 6th. Roberts, Moreira, Van den Goldberg and Vaya, your top 10. Vietti, Munoz, Ortola and Arenas complete your top 14. So that means going through qualifying 1 tomorrow, Hungarian Grand Prix winner David Alonso and 2 of the top 4 in the World Championship, both from Fantic, who both crashed this afternoon. Barry Baltus and Aaron Canet. Silverstone winner Senna Aegis, another illustrious name, going through Q1 this afternoon, as Motegi sprung a surprise or 2 here on day 1. Not if you're Jay Dixon, though. He topped both sessions here this afternoon. MotoGP's crucial practice session is on the way next for you.
The GP's Tour of Asia and Australia kicks off with the mobility resort Motegi, huge Honda-built motorsport complex around a 2-hour drive north of Tokyo in the peaceful, natural landscapes of Japan's Kanto district. Marc Marquez stands on the brink of a first MotoGP title in 2019, with the Spanish star looking to convert his first match point on Sunday. Practice is next live. It's time for MotoGP. So our first race here in Motegi all the way back in 1999. Magnificent, massive motorsport complex. It's first built by Honda 2 years prior to that. Miles in length. All hard braking around this circuit. Turn level down. It's 1 3 for the turn 5. Everyone to get Japanese Grand Prix. Good afternoon and a welcome back to the Moto Grand Prix of Japan. We are almost into October.